I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and here today with me is Andrew O'Donnell, Managing Director at SuperCharged Stocks. Thanks so much for being here online with me today.
Oh, it's great to see you again, Charlotte. So thank you for having me on. It's wonderful to be here.
Of course. So we're kind of catching up right now from PAC, which is when we spoke to each other last. Circumstances, I think, have changed a lot since then. It's a difficult task, but how would you sum up the first half of 2020? How has it been for you?
It's actually gotten a lot busier for me. It's certainly a strange period of time. I think we're kind of, I don't know if spoiled is the right word, but a lot of people in this sector and at the conferences we go to have been talking about a collapse of this kind of nature for some time. Now, no one knew it was going to be COVID. It was going to be this event that was going to cause it, but certainly I think most people saw that there had to be a change that was coming down the pipeline, and we were kind of met very shockingly with it. I think at PDAC it was started kind of trickling in and was affecting North America. So there, I mean, I'm on board with my theory back from a month earlier, 2 months earlier, was these tough times were upon us, coming very close, coming fast. And then we hit with the COVID, and we can see now we're living now in that result of what the World Economic Forum calls the Great Reset, which also was a term a lot of us have been talking about, was that we need to, in order to make sense of the economy, make sense of the financial system that we've got that is so out of control, there has to be some sort of reset that we can hit. So this was a very interesting, if not convenient, reset to have. Now, what that's going to look like, we're still up in the air, but we do know, 10 trillion has been printed into the U.S. economy, where it's hard to tell where that went. And then places like the World Economic Forum, they're actively saying we're going to spend $1 trillion of our money that we've gotten in specific areas. So it's pretty interesting to see, because they're flat out telling you where we're pushing things, where this reset's going to look. And if people are asking where should I put my money, that's a great place to start looking.
Right. And that feeds very well into my next question, which is what investing actions have you been taking over the last few months? What's changed, or maybe what's not changed about your portfolio during that time?
For me, nothing has really changed, because the underlying theme has always been there's going to be a return to basically fundamentals, but also with that notion that ESG, the electrification of the future, is such a major component, regardless of any debate either way. That's where the world is going. So what do we need for that? We need to have the copper. We have to have a strong foundation in mining. So we can see that now with a lot of the mining companies that a lot of us have been following and talking about for last years. They're starting to see a lot more action and a lot more interest. And because people are at home, they're trying to make it a few extra dollars some way. So they are kind of being forced to pay a bit more attention and take responsibility for their own money a little bit, which was one of my things before was, 80% of people have their money in managed product, and they should, because if you don't have an interest in your own finances, you should have someone else take care of that. But maybe in order to get higher and better rates of return, you have to look at different markets. And this mining market has been in such a slump for 8-9 years. It's finally having its day, and it's starting to come alive. And for stock pickers, it's a dream come true. There's lots of amazing stocks doing exceptionally well. But other than that, is that we can see this trend towards the 5G smart cities of the future, and that's all that electric battery-powered type of push, as well as wearable devices. So your health, everything connected, security. I mean, that's another huge issue right now that we're facing with, we can see, everywhere in the West. So there's a lot of themes that are going to get more attention than others. But I think if you follow the basic pattern of what they're flat out telling you, which is we need new types of energy, new types of battery-powered energy, you're going to be in a better case scenario than others. So I've looked at a company like Extra Resources, which is a power conversion company, which at first blush doesn't sound exciting, but they're able to increase the capacity of engines, specifically smaller electric motor vehicle engines. Had great success, and they've had a great run so far. I don't want to get too much into the weeds on one specific stock, but it's things like that where you can see that, listen, that fits in the guidelines as to what people want to see.
Right. So you're really following strong themes that you've been following for quite a while. Maybe the better question then is, where have you seen other people going during these last few months? What trends have you seen there in terms of what other investors are doing, and how is that impacting the spaces that you're watching?
I think it comes down to what type of investor you are. I mean, if you're a trader, yeah, there's tons of money to be made if you start trading and you can start. Uh, there's been a huge increase of people reaching out to me with either like Bitcoin funds or like currency trading and forex traders. So yeah, if you're a trader, then there's a huge market. It's massively volatile, so you can make money. There's a lot of people trying to just play the big board. So your big NASDAQ, your big New York Stock, and they're playing it, I'll get this one because it's low and maybe it's going to come back. Airlines, you hear that all the time. So it depends on where do you see yourself? For me, I'm never very good at, like, say, picking a stock like that. I'm not going to chase it. I don't have an interest in a company that's already trading at $300 a share. So for me, I'll never look at FANG. I'll never look at stocks like that. I would rather find a company that's going to be of value to them they could buy, because I want to get in. My risk level and tolerance is I want to find companies early, get in early, and ride that big, huge wave. For most people, that level of risk is far too high, and it's a lot of work. They wouldn't even know where to begin with, and a lot of people can't get opportunity to get private placements, IPOs, all that type of thing. So they wouldn't even know where to look. So most people, if they can get 10 or 15 or 20%, that's going to be outstanding. But for me, we're sitting in a period of time in which you could literally make like generational wealth right now. And it has been like that with any of these massive upheavals or shifts in time. Even if we go back to the Great Depression, the vast majority of people suffered and did not do very well. But believe me, that top 10% made out like bandits. So there's tons of money to be made, and I don't see that being any different. Once again, too, we're like, it's not like this is over. This has just started, and I don't want to be the bearer of bad news and kind of grumbly, mumbly, upsetting type. But nothing's being fixed. Nothing's changed. I mean, there's just, other than pumping in a massive amount of money into the system, we haven't had to deal with the result of what that's going to look like for everyone. Whenever the new normal phrase that takes hold. In any event, it's going to look slightly different because they're flat out telling us that that's the case. And it will fill along these lines of ESG. So there's going to be environmental component, sustainable component, and whether the political side will leave that alone. But that's between like World Economic Forum, the UN, BlackRock Capital, who's now managing part of the Federal Reserve's money. They're not shy about telling you exactly what they're going to do. So whenever I tell people to go look for news, just go directly to their site. Don't ignore most of the mainstream news. It's just nonsense. But you can flat out go to a lot of these people that have control and that have the money. They're flat out telling you what they're going to do. So I look at that and I read it. I go, okay, there's certain themes that I want to follow, and they're going to have an impact in that new world. And so far, so good.
Okay. Now, I know you're not focused only on the mining sector. We've been talking about a few of the areas you look at, but it's been an interesting time for resource companies this year since COVID-19. Can you tell me a little bit about how the companies that you follow have reacted to that? What's been going on there? What have you seen in the mining sector?
I think the response has been great, because whether or not one was looking at the data with COVID or not, everyone has to be cautious and be cognizant and be safe. And I think the initial response was correct, is that everyone err on the side of caution, and we have done that. Certainly it's now time to move forward, and it just reemphasizes that there's going to be a massive need, not only in supply chain, say for something very obvious like food, which people are talking about. That's going to be a problem in the future moving forward here right now because of COVID. But supply chain in general for all resources, because what's also being highlighted very dramatically is that this notion of, why can't we all just get along, which people kind of try to keep on pushing, is that we have this one world government or one world organization. Will never ever happen. It can't happen, because there's different people with different personalities and different cultures. And we're kind of seeing that now play out, not only in the West, but with lots of other countries. Because at the end of the day, even the people promoting this idea of a one world kind of culture, they still are assuming they're the ones who are going to control it. So this interdependence of things has caused a bit of an issue. So that supply chain is key. I think you'll see the US say more about that particularly, is that they want to have control of the copper. They want to have control of rare earth. They want to have control of lithium. So companies that kind of cater to that, I think are going to find themselves in a good situation. Certainly North American played mining companies that are looking for key resources are going to be looked at very, very well for the next years to come. So we're sitting in a wonderful position. And because we have, not many people talk about the lifestyle companies that are involved in this sector, but there are so many very strong management teams out there and really strong companies out there that have been overlooked, that the more attention that we can shine and show people, there's a lot of money to be made there. And you're also doing the right thing, because we want people to invest in countries where we know the regulations are high and they're strong. And once again, they meet that ESG kind of requirement where we know we're doing sustainable growth.
Okay, so maybe we can go a little bit deeper into where you're seeing opportunities in the resource sector. You mentioned a couple of metals that may be positioned well in the future. What can you be a little bit more specific about what you're looking?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious ones are always gold, because people, they're really starting to attract gold right now. So I'd be remiss not to talk about Tudor Gold, who I talked about a year ago in New York, as well as I presented for them at the Metals Investor Forum. They've done very well. I think back then the stock was at 30 cents. They're up around $2 today on the news of, good. It was good news, but Eric Sprott showing a really strong attention to them. So that's been great. But especially if you look at Ontario, Quebec gold stories are really heating up. Of course, everyone knows Great Bear, which has done exceptionally well. They need no introduction, but companies like Amex Exploration as well has really started to come to fruition. And I think they're doing about 200,000 meter drill program, which is outstanding. There's other companies like Lorient Metals, which doesn't get as much press, and they're a bit more quiet. They're up to some really good things as well. They're a gold play, but also companies like Generation Mining, which is involved in palladium. That's a really interesting company, an excellent team. And palladium is something that fits into that box of we need it for catalytic converters. Once again, it's an environmental play. So things like that, where you have to kind of look and go, well, what is that metal, or what is that resource used in? Is it going to be something we're going to use in the future? And when you can see something like palladium and you go, what do you use palladium for? And you find out, you go, oh, well, yeah, we're going to need a lot of that. And great, it's in Canada. So things like that, I think when people realize the amount of resources that we need to get to where we want with clean energy, we've been putting in the education. I think it's time. And we're seeing that time now, and the results where people are saying, yeah, you know what, it's not all bad out there. We need to get energy from somewhere. Never mind if you started paying attention to uranium, which has had a bit of a run as well. So it's just, I think we're starting to see that we're getting a lot more attention. There's certainly a lot more interest. And now it's kind of an outside the box one, but an interesting story in and of itself is helium, which is not in the mining side. It's poking holes in the ground, but it's an interesting one, because I looked at helium and thought, oh, well, like blimps and balloons and football games, because really I just hadn't really thought about it. But then you look deeper and you realize that for all of your MRI machines, for all your nuclear reactors, even if you want a Bitcoin mine or crypto mine, you need to have this high energy coolant, and that's all from helium. So the smarter, faster chips that we get, stronger, more powerful, they tend to melt when they're too close together. You need to have these massive cooling systems to keep things in check. Even on some of your stronger game computer components, you need to have these high energy coolant or high efficiency coolant systems. So when I saw that with helium, I thought, oh, okay, that's really interesting. And of course, helium has gone up 300% in price in the last 3 years. You go, okay, so there's a drop in supply. There's a certainly increasing demand. This is very interesting. So, Desert Mountain Energy is a company that's been getting a lot of attention since PDAC. think it was somewhere around 22 cents, 23 cents, and now it's up the 45-cent realm trading because they got some good results off their first well, and they're proceeding, hitting milestones, doing the right thing. And once again, it's a critical, helium's critical for a lot of these components, and it's sitting in the Holbrook Basin in the US, which once again fits my kind of theory that that supply chain, who has it, where is it coming from, that's all going to matter moving forward.
Okay. Just a little bit more on helium, because I've heard it mentioned. I heard it mentioned around PDAC. I've heard it come up before. For plays that are so early stage like that, when there's really not very many companies in there, what's the best thing for investors to do? Should they just jump into what they see? How do they start learning to evaluate new ideas like that, where they might not have a benchmark of this is what I should look?
Well, it's great because I just did a report on one, so you can come to my website. But beyond that is that, what I'll tell you is this, is what's interesting about it is that there's helium, there's a primary and a secondary resource for helium. And the first, which will upset some, is a byproduct of liquid natural gas. So your biggest liquid natural gas companies were your number one helium producers. Now, we can see what's happening in that market, and they're shutting down wells. They're not pumping out as much. They're not capturing the helium right now. So a primary producer like a Desert Mountain Energy, I think I can only think of like 4 or 5 other companies that are even in that space. They're just helium. They're getting a lot more attention because they're not looking for liquid natural gas. They're not involved in that. It's just helium. And so someone who is more environmentally friendly and says, okay, you're not looking at it for the energy, you're looking at it as just the coolant, they can feel a bit better about looking there, rather than, I think 80 to 90% of all helium in the past has come from like your Chevrons, your natural gas producers. So this is an excellent place to look. There are a couple other companies. I think you guys have a top 5 as well of companies to look on your site. So, but it's a small size companies there involved. And for me, I looked at Erwin Olean, who is the CEO and president there, and he's got a pretty impressive background, and he's extremely passionate about finding these rare stories that are just kind of no one's heard about and bringing them to fruition. So he kind of fits that model of, especially with newer companies in the resource sector, is that the management, has just as much an impact as the commodity and where you're looking. And, when you have someone who's had a lot of success and has done a lot of that heavy lifting to get to where they are, he conveys that story very well as to why this is so vital and necessary moving forward.
Okay. I want to ask a question on ESG as well, because I do agree that it's a theme that's really becoming more and more important. More people are looking at it. I think it's not too hard for people to look at different metals and say, okay, this is going to be part of the green energy future. But if people want to get deeper into looking at what companies are doing in terms of ESG, how can they do that? Just going beyond, this is a good metal for green energy.
Like I said, it's like the World Energy Forum and also BlackRock, like the massive $8 trillion fund BlackRock, they're pretty vocal about it. Even Goldman Sachs, they'll host webinars on ESG. They have a newsletter that you can subscribe for free as well. Because it is new and it's in its infancy, but it's because it's such a powerful driver. Like anything that comes from a globalist, United Nations, whoever, they push these things very hard and take away the politics apart so people don't get, oh, I don't agree with that or this or that. Is that a lot of what they're saying is really good. We should be planting more trees. We need to be doing that, So you'll listen to it and go, you know what? I agree with that. We should be planting more trees. And if I can cut back on that, I will. And if we can get the resources and we can get, things more efficiently working, yeah, I would like to be helping the environment. Most reasonable people want that. So and also a quality of opportunity. People want that for everyone around the world. So it isn't a big stretch for a lot of the key points they're making. For us, if we're motivated correctly, which right now we are all pretty well motivated towards a single goal, maybe this is an interesting shift that's occurred that allows a larger plan or reset or great shift or whatever to take hold, that if you look back in history, it's happened many times. And so I would say try to avoid too much of the mainstream stuff, but go directly to the World Economic Forum, go to BlackRock, go look at Goldman Sachs, do keyword searches like ESG plus BlackRock, ESG plus Goldman Sachs, because you're going to go right to the heart of the matter and you'll see exactly what they're saying, or UN and ESG. Now there's lots of boring stuff there, but you can skim through it pretty well. And there's lots of other writers that have resource on that as well to help you out, kind of cheat sheet as well. But it's such a key driver moving forward. And if they're making a big issue of promoting this as hard as they are, it's not going away.
Okay, since we're talking about what's new and exciting, I also want to ask you what you're seeing outside the resource space. We all love mining, but what else is going on? Where are the opportunities?
Well, the one and I'm not going to go into, but I think there's going to be room for a cryptocurrency, but I'm just not there yet. So that's something there was rumblings by the Fed announcing that they were looking at a crypto solution for LIBOR rates. That was about a month ago in the midst of all the protests and turmoil and everything. And it was one story that just kind of got out and just snuck by everyone. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. If they're announcing that they're looking in that direction, then that's happening. But more interesting, and especially people in Canada and Vancouver, is I think that the psychedelic space, and I'm probably getting into a lot of trouble. I think there's huge potential there. I don't mean just to make money, but the war on drugs is clearly and obviously not worked. I think anyone who's watched any of the specials and they see the amount of money, it isn't working. Addiction is such a massive problem. I look back, it was the last month, more people died from addiction than died from COVID, yet you don't hear boo about addiction. So if you want to look at numbers, there's a clear and obvious threat, and it isn't COVID. Addiction is such a huge issue, and there is promise that with this ayahuasca, ibogaine, and plant-based medicines like this, that there could be a solution if there's enough science done. So for me, I have zero interest in the retail use or the fun factor of using these things. I'm only specifically interested right now in learning about medicinal uses that would be either doctor treated, at a treatment center, at some sort of place you have to go to, and it's all science-based. So they're building enough of a case to the FDA or for the government to get approval to say this is effective for treating PTSD, blood-brain disorders, post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, and of course, addiction. So I think that there's been enough study over the last 50 years to show that there is some efficacy there, but I would really like to see in the next couple of years a lot of hard science, which is being done right now, and build that model up, because that mental health aspect is a key indicator of culture. And in the West, we have such horrible addiction issues that if we can set this on a different path, the savings would be huge. The efficiency of workforce would be much greater. And also, maybe people get along a little bit better.
Yeah, one thing I've heard about psychedelics, and I haven't heard very much yet because it's so new, but it's that the companies in the space seem to be treating it very much as a research-based kind of thing. They're really going the medical route, not recreational at all. So I guess we'll see where that leads.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go, because and even whenever it was cannabis, I just shook my head and said I had no interest. And that was maybe a mistake, because there were some good cannabis companies looking specifically at solutions that could work for mental health. And I was kind of late to that. I thought, okay, if there's value there, there's value. So most of the companies seem to be taking that scientific approach of, we're only after this. And if there's some data, then we can present the data. And that's the only companies I would say at this point I'm even entertaining. I'm lucky because I've got access to a lot of them and I talk to them. I have no strong position either way, but I'm certainly having a lot of fun learning about it. And for those that are interested, I'm going to be doing a lot more interviews and chatting about it, putting on both the analyst hat as well as just the interest hat, and kind of going, is there is there anything here yet, or are we still way too early? So it's interesting, it's fascinating, and I think people can see if it hits some strong science and it hits some strong numbers, the market is massive. So yeah, there's money to be made.
Okay, well, I think we'll leave it there. That was great. I think you gave us a lot of new opportunities for people to potentially think about. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Charlotte. I appreciate the time.
No problem. Once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing is Network, and this is Andrew O'Donnell with SuperCharged Stocks.